So let me introduce you to our panelists today. We've got first Jerry Fankhauser with UF IFAS. He is the Assistant Director of the Florida Agriculture Experiment Station. He reports to our Dean for Research, Dr. Rob Gilbert. He provides administrative support to all our research programs, all the activities, and is involved in setting the investment priorities and investment in that research. Now, he obtained his undergrad master's degree from Purdue University, crop physiology, crop management. After that, I think, Purdue realized they had a pretty good student there, and they decided they needed him to go to work for them. So he spent some years as a director of one of their research farms. He left there for a couple of years and went to work in industry, working for a chemical company, and then he came back to Purdue and was director of Purdue's 8 research farms, and then he was assistant director of the Purdue or Indiana Agricultural Experiment Station. Jerry, you've been with IFAS for going on 3 years. And I will say, like I said, I've only been with IFAS for about 18 months, and when I've got a question for Gainesville, Jerry is usually the one I call to pick his brain and get information. So I consider Jerry not only to be an administrator that I report to, but I also consider him to be a good friend. Next, we have Dr. Stephen Leon from Florida A&M University. He is a professor and associate dean for Dean for Research for the university. He completed his graduate degrees in agricultural economics at Louisiana State University. He is now program director for the Evans, Allen, and McIntyre Stennis research programs, and he provides leadership and support to the research programs at the university, at the College of Agriculture and Food Sciences. He also, to note, he is involved in giving students opportunities to get involved in research, to give them an idea if that would be a good career track for them, and I commend him for doing that. We need more people getting involved in agricultural research, field research in particular. He is working with FAMU industry partners to conduct research that will contribute to the development of the industrial hemp industry here in the state of Florida. Now, the next panelist was supposed to be Mike Kelly, president of Sunshine Hemp. Unfortunately, he had a situation, he's in Kentucky, and had a situation where he had to cancel his trip down here to speak to you. But in his place is Jeff Sharkey. You've already heard his bio, president of the Florida Hemp Association. He's very much aware of Sunshine Hemp because he is a partner associate in the company. So he can speak for the research and the activities going on with Sunshine Hemp. So we'll have him. I'm going to have each speaker come up and give an overview of their programs, their research projects, and make any statements they'd like. And then I'm going to try to open up the floor to questions because I know many of you have questions for our participants. So we're going to start with Jerry Fankhauser. You can either stay seated or come up here. I'll give you that choice.
Good morning. My name is Jerry Fankhauser. I appreciate that illustrious introduction, Glenn. I do appreciate that. On behalf of our Senior Vice President, Dr. Jack Payne, and our Dean of Research, Dr. Rob Gilbert, we are pleased to be here and to represent one half of the pilot project effort here in the state of Florida. And I'm really impressed by the number of people in the room. It shows that the good people in this room are doing their homework. They're learning all they can about a potential crop. And there's a lot of hype here, and it's good for us to understand what the realities are with a new venture like this. My background did include 27 years with Purdue Agriculture. The last 3 involved administratively with the Indiana Industrial Hemp Pilot Project. And so I not only got engaged with hemp production up in Indiana, but I grew up with hemp because I grew up in northern Indiana, and we had this weed in the ditches we called ditchweed, and that was rope. back from World War I, and it grows in the Kankakee Valley Basin, southeast of Chicago, and it never bothered us too much. We could control it culturally. And so when we talk about invasiveness, we know, and I'm really jumping around, but I do want to touch on this. Hemp can be invasive, but it's been managed very well by corn and soybean growers across the upper Midwest, the Corn Belt in particular. So do want to mention that. I was hired to support research, and I believe I spend 80% of my time now with industrial hemp in this pilot project. I give an analogy. We came out of the rest stop and we jumped into the fast lane on the interstate. We're not the first state to engage in the pilot project. We're one of the last under DEA permitting. We are still currently permitted under the federal DEA administration. But we are working hard to begin to understand how hemp might fit in the state of Florida. Kudos to the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. You are all blessed to have FDACs. They have not been given much time to come up with rules, to provide guidance to both Florida A&M and the University of Florida so we could get seed acquired, which is not easy, and get that seed in the ground and begin this research project. Our project is comprised of over 15 scientists, and I do want to acknowledge Dr. Josh Freeman. Josh, if you could raise your hand in the back of the room. He is the lead scientist at our North Florida Quincy location in the Panhandle. So we are doing research up and down the great state of Florida, but we are focused up here in the Panhandle, and that's where your interest is, not only at our Quincy location with active grow efforts, but also doing best management practice work at our West Florida location located in Jay, east of Pensacola. FDAC's Office of Ag Water Policy has been supportive enough to give us money for equipment. We just installed a linear irrigation system because to grow hemp in Florida, as you growers know, if you're involved in production agriculture, we're going to need to know some best management practices. So we are now going to move into that and get those BMPs established as soon as possible. Again, hats off to the Department of Agriculture here in the state and Commissioner Freed for her leadership. So again, we have over 15 scientists that are engaged in the program. We have 12 or more permits. I say more, Eric, because I think we have one still pending. Those 12 permits include a federally permitted seed storage location, and then 2 or 3, maybe even 4 permits that are seed or plant tissue processing. And so one of the great things about being at the University of Florida is we not only have IFAS, the Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences, but we have a medical school. So we have that component where we can enlist the expertise in our pharmacology area to look at CBD and THC profiles and testing. So in case there's a question out there, who's doing our THC testing? We're doing that in-house with our good friends across campus in the School of Pharmacology. And if you've been to any of our workshops, you have seen that expertise do a great job talking about what we're seeing in the project and what we hope to acquire and recommend onto our good friends at FDACs. What are we doing in the pilot project? We had 3 main objectives, and early on we had to look at the agronomics or the horticultural aspects of how hemp might fit in the state of Florida. We needed to evaluate as many hemp varieties as we could acquire. And there again, I want to say thank you to companies like Greenpoint Research, Green Roads. Green Roads are our main corporate sponsor for the research contract that allowed this pilot project to happen. Other companies like Greenpoint Research provided certified seed or plant material, gift in kind, to really move our pilot project forward to look at the most diverse genetics as we could get early on. Now, once we had those genetics, we had to look at the type of systems. When you talk about hemp production, what kind of hemp are you talking about? CBD hemp will be grown a certain way, grain and fiber grown another way, and so we have to understand in our state with our sandy soils and our existing infrastructure, how we were going to make these systems work. And then you get to the invasiveness. We have great expertise in our institute. Dr. Luke Flory is heading up the invasive work. Hopefully that work will show what we probably know already, especially in the upper Midwest. There's invasiveness there, but if we can manage it and we have the proper security plan for plant material, seed dispersal to remain on farm and follow-up observation, we can keep this hemp where it needs to be, in the fields, and those products up and down the highway in controlled settings. That's the goal there. What are we doing? We've had a first set of grows, 4 outdoor grow locations, at least 5 indoor grow. We are doing some applied work. When I talk about applied, that's very grower-focused information. But we're also doing something that's really lacking, and the gentleman in the blue shirt was touching on that. There is quite a lack of good science on hemp, the cannabis sativa species itself. How are the effects of photoperiod with different genetics? What happens out in the field? Growing hemp in Florida is a lot different than growing hemp in northern Indiana. Our day length is much different. So we are investigating those type of effects, the day length, the temperature, the humidity. Someone mentioned earlier this state suffers from plagues and pestilence. I've heard that noted. We're a hot mess. We have higher humidity, higher nighttime temperatures, and so we are looking at this in controlled environments at our mid-Florida location located in Apopka and trying to get a handle on what you all as growers may see once these cultivation permits go out the door either late this year or early next year. We're also taking plant material and we're taking it into the lab on campus doing THC and CBD testing. We want to see how those percentages change over time with these diverse genetics from different companies. Is there a comfort level for you all as growers? I know there was some apprehension. If we can get a good understanding of the effects of drought stress, excessive heat and humidity on what I call THC creep, then we can at least put that information out. And I should point out, it's very important that though the way statute came together in January of 2017 provided us an opportunity to do a pilot project, we had to go find funding. It was not state funded. And so Green Roads was our sponsor, but we were able to do everything for under an open science environment. So all this data, all this information that we're working hard to acquire is going to be presented at workshops and get-togethers like this, and the nearly 7 formal workshops we've done to date, and the 30 media and other presentations that our team has done since the pilot project initiated. So I think I've rambled probably excessively, but hopefully I've captured some of those issues. I will speak on pollen drift in a little bit when we get to Q&A, but I do want to turn it over to our good friends at Florida A&M. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Good morning. My name is Stephen Leong, and I represent Florida A&M University in its industrial hemp project. I don't want to say, but unfortunately, I don't have as much to say as Jerry over here because they have been in this project for quite some time. The approach that Florida A&M University has taken in this industrial hemp project is a little different from what our sister university is doing in Gainesville. We have chosen to take a slightly different route. In our research, we have solicited the support and collaboration of industry partners. And we have 3 industry partners that are involved in this project. And one of them is right beside me here, Sunshine Hemp, represented by Dr. Jeff Shaki. We have another one called Green Earth Canoceutical. And our third partner is Future Farm Technologies. I think the head office is in Canada. So we are working through these 3 industry partners to conduct our research. We just started our research. In fact, it's probably about 2 months old. So I really don't have that much information to share with you about what is going on. But I'll tell you whatever that we have in mind and whatever information that we have here. The projects are more. We have 7 what you call approved permits for our research projects, and they are located sort of spread out in Florida. We have one site in Tallahassee, where we have about 3 acres, and we just recently planted about 1,500 plants there on the site. Then we've got another site in Newberry, I think near Gainesville, and we've got about 22,000 plants, and some of them are still in the pots. And then we have the biggest site that is located in Batu, where we have about 40,000 plants already planted. And that's the oldest site where the plants are about, I think, 7 to 8 weeks old. And we've got 4 other sites that has been approved, but we haven't planted anything yet. So that is the areas, I mean, those are the areas that we have planted, and we are working with our industry partners to collect the necessary data that we hope in the near future to be able to share with growers and industry participants, people like you, actually. We don't have as many people working in the hemp project as we would like to. We have got actually 5 people that are involved in the project. We have got 2 entomologists, and I must point out that these are really experienced and good people, and they're working on IPM projects. We have got an agronomist, and we've got agroforestry, and we've got an agricultural economist. Not me, but somebody else in the college that is working with me and the other faculty members to try and collect as much information as possible about the industrial hemp project. When we were trying to put together our research plans, and we did sort of some amount of brainstorming, and the reason is that we need to find some answers to the many questions that are being posed to us. And I think it is not surprising for me to mention that there is an overwhelming demand for information from growers, from all sorts of people out there in the community that wants to know how to participate, what to grow, and so forth. And you can just imagine, at this point in time, we have so many questions and very little or no answers at all to those questions. So we put together our thinking cap and came up with 3 broad objectives that we think will satisfy the questions that were posed to us in the Florida statute. And one of them is to identify what are the varieties, to do some form of varietal evaluation that will be, how shall I say, useful for people like you. We would like to identify the varieties that will grow well under Florida conditions. And so we have some of our partners working on that. Unfortunately, because of limited resources, we did not look at a wide range of cultivars that my colleagues at the University of Florida are looking at. They look at 50 different varieties, I guess, from fiber to grain and CBD varieties. But in our case, I think the plants that we have put on the ground are all for the evaluation of CBD varieties. And there are 5 of them, actually, and not very many. And these are the 5 promising varieties that our partners have said that they think, based on their experience and knowledge, will do very well here in Florida. So they are in Tallahassee area, in the Gainesville area, near Newberry, and one in Batu. The other areas that we will be planting will be in Cannonsville and in Port Aguda. And I guess probably Dr. Shaki here will be able to say a little bit later on about some of their plans. But I'm quite sure we may be looking at some of the other varieties as well, like the fiber varieties and also the grain varieties. So that's where we are right now. And we are continuing to collect necessary and useful information that we hope in the near future we will be able to share that with the growers.
Yes. Thank you. Jump right into this.
Yeah, go right ahead, Jeff Sharkey.
In case I haven't introduced myself, Jeff Sharkey. Listen, it's an honor to be here. I'm actually a designated hitter and substituting for Mike Kelly, who is interesting as we're talking about the business of hemp. Mike is the president of Sunshine Hemp. I met him several years ago, and I'm going to give you a little background just very quickly. They've explained it. This industrial hemp research program, was passed by Florida legislation in 2017, authorized by the 2014 Farm Bill. Long before this 2018 bill passed, and really it was the only opportunity in Florida to move forward by federal law. We had to work with universities, with colleges of agriculture. That's why these 2 university folks are here. back then. So when that passed, Senator Montford was the sponsor, Representative Masulo from Citrus County really believed it, passed that piece of legislation, and really the goal of that was to develop industry partners to identify varieties of hemp that would be sustainable. I'm going to go through Mike Kelly's presentation a little bit, and ensure that folks who potentially could get into this business, and we didn't realize at that particular point in time that the 2018 would happen and 2019 would come along, but I think it was prescient because we now have these research programs that are looking at testing different genetic varieties of hemp, both on the CBD fiber seed side, that will be available to folks for Florida. Just a quick comment. Mike Kelly, and I'm sorry he isn't here, he's much more interesting than I am on this topic. Florida-based sod vegetable farmer for 30 years out of St. Cloud, Florida. Was recruited to go to Kentucky when they passed their 2014 Farm Bill up there after the federal bill passed, and worked with several folks who were out of Colorado and others, and as the grower and the geneticist, and grew one of the largest hemp companies in America today over the course of 3 or 4 years. Kentucky, as you know, has a huge amount of activity going on. That particular company is probably the biggest in Kentucky. Mike came back to Florida when this industrial hemp research program passed, and we met, and he talked about wanting to get back into Florida and doing this research on Florida soil. He's a Florida boy. He's got better boots than I do, and is much more knowledgeable. So, as Dr. Leong pointed out, the idea behind that bill was to develop industry partners, was to develop partnerships with people who knew the hemp business, who had done this, obviously, in some other state. And that was the approach FAMU took. UF is using their outstanding IFAS program, the sponsored research program. He's mentioned their partners. So FAMU put out an ITN. We had 11 responses, I think.
No, we had about almost about 20,
20
different.
And so in that process, they evaluated who would be an effective partner, how would we utilize FAMU's faculty, and identify this research, the research criteria that we went through. Mike and his partners, and I've helped them out move through this process, are very excited about moving forward. As you can imagine, when the 2018 Farm Bill passed and Florida passed the state hemp plan, there was a question about whether or not someone really needed to do the research. I mean, some of these folks know how to grow hemp in Kentucky and Colorado and Oregon, but really felt compelled to understand the value of what UF is doing and what FAMU is doing to really work intensely on identifying various varieties, various soil conditions, looking at invasive species, working closely with Department of Ag, and identifying not only the seed genetics, I'm going to talk a little bit about that, the harvest or the planting practices, techniques, drying, cultivation, mechanized harvesting, all sorts of practices that would be beneficial for you to understand, as this business moves forward in Florida. So I'm sorry Mike's not here, and I hope he's listening in, but he'll be, the idea behind Sunshine Hemp and the other partners is to share that information, and certainly share the not only the information, the research, but some of these seed genetics that I think they're going to develop. So let me just and I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing. The overall project goals are obviously to identify, cultivate, test, and quantify which hemp genetics and growing methods are suitable for Florida regions and climates. I know we've all said that. It's evaluating planting techniques, technical efficiencies of mechanized harvesting, crop drying, and stabilizing of biomass for storage, and really to look at the economic feasibility. All of you are interested in getting into this business. It's exploding around the country. The economics of it are shifting, are changing. When people tell me that they're growing 30,000 acres in Montana, right? What does that mean for Florida? The question, and Florida has gotten kind of late to the game here. I think we've talked about that in terms of this new state hemp program. And I asked Mike Kelly, who's maybe one of the better hemp cultivators, producers in the country, Holly Bell had asked him, are we too late to the game? And he said, listen, the research you're going to be doing is invaluable. That never happened before. I mean, farmers went out and tested out genetics and tried things out. A lot of failure, right? Some successes, a lot of failure. He said, but because it's evolved, the genetics have evolved, the knowledge about planting has evolved since 2014, the players in the space, the networking, the processing opportunities, the technology has changed. Florida is in the right place at the right time. And from a guy who knows this business, it's really good to hear. One of the things that is important in all of this as well, and I think Steve mentioned this morning, as did Eric, is the question of where are you going to get seeds to grow? The state law requires certified seeds. I know that the Department of Ag has searched the country and internationally to identify where those certified seeds can be made available to folks who want to get into business in Florida. The state law and federal law, but state law says, you've got to find a certified seed association, organization. There are numbers of them around the country. Not many have certified hemp seeds. In addition to that, the research pilot programs can certify seeds as well. So that's beneficial for, I think, folks getting into this business. They're going to get a little head start, right? They're starting this summer, this fall, working on seed varieties and genetics, testing things out, and they will be making seeds available that have been, tested in Florida. Different kinds of genetic varieties have the record keeping and data keeping that FAMU is requiring. Kind of a very intense data analysis, data record keeping, and all that is really beneficial for you, who are saying, listen, I don't want to start into this without eyes wide open, without knowing, I mean, a lot of the, and UF can testify to this. If you want to get a fiber seed from Canada, it may not do well in Florida. If you want to get seed from Oregon, grows well in Oregon. When you get it here, and you get, it's a feminized seed, but statistically, a portion of that are going to be male seeds. So if you're new in this and you get out there and start planting all these seeds, and all of a sudden you've got males that you didn't expect, and a variety you didn't know about, the percentage and probability of potential failure is higher. So that's one of the focuses, obviously, of Sunshine Hemp is to work towards certifying seeds. So they've spent a lot of time with the Department of Ag to ensure that all of these research programs can provide those to interested farmers. Right? So let me just mention a couple of things. So Sunshine Hemp has got two research plots, one in Kenansville, Florida, which is outside of St. Cloud, and another in Punta Gorda, Florida. And Mr. Kelly and his colleagues are going to talk about who's on that team. Are leasing a 100,000 square foot former vegetable cooling facility, packing facility, and they're starting this week with these seed varieties, growing them indoors, testing 5 to 7 different varieties, and will, I've been told, have those plants. They'll be started indoors, grown outdoors on a 2-acre plot, and then have test results, research back, and seeds available by January. So that's a fast track. And they're testing, for all of you who know this business better than I, they're testing the normal photo period hemp plants that are grown in Kentucky, and we can talk a little bit more about that in Q&A, but also auto-flowering plants, which can flower every 75 days, not dependent on photo periods, which are critical for flowering and CBD. But hybrid plants, and the reason that I think they're able to do that is they're working with a seed company out of Oregon called Phytonics, which is probably one of the largest seed banks, cannabis seed banks in the country. I've been told, thousands of different seed varieties for different climatic conditions, whether it's Colombia, whether it's Spain, whether it's Kentucky, so Mike has been working with them to identify seeds that are a high probability of viability and success in Florida. on this whole certified seed issue, and this is important for all of us, and I know the frustration that Stephen and the ag folks have. The Florida law said you have to use a certified seed. No other state is doing that. One of the things I know Commissioner Freed wants to do is to develop this fresh from Florida, high quality, branded, certified product. That's a market differentiator for you versus someone who's growing in Alabama, Tennessee. So the idea behind that certification really originally was, from the legislature, was let's make this the highest quality, best product possible. Right? And so folks at Phytonics are actually in another industrial hemp research project in Oregon with Oregon State University on a seed, one of the first certified seed planting seed programs. So their seeds have been tested by OSU. They've got these varieties. So we're, Mike has done his due diligence, and so they are partnering with Sunshine Hemp to provide those varieties. We can talk a little bit more about some of the certified seed stuff. I don't want to bore everybody by going through the actual research protocols, but it's pretty extensive. And the folks who know this business, like you out there, are really going step by step by step to test these varieties indoors, grow them, germination plans, floral periods at a certain period, compliance and monitoring, testing constantly, record keeping along the way. And I can read Mike's presentation, but I don't want to bore you with that. So why don't we leave it at that, open it up for some questions. I think I will say the permit requirements that Eric mentioned for this industrial hemp research program are very extensive, and 13 different categories, and there's a lot of issues that have to be covered to tell them exactly how you, not just contamination and containment, but right. And so in talking to Mr. Kelly and others who are as experienced as him, some of you are in this room, let me just finish with this. This research program is really designed to improve the percentage of success for Florida growers. As you can imagine, and I think Mr. Holly Bell will mention today, not only is this an indication of interest, they're anticipating 3,000 applications, right, for permits. That's a lot, all over the state. A lot of those, a lot of interest, actually, a lot of resources, not a lot of experience. So the key to this, as we tell people, and Mr. Kelly's mantra is, get a plan, right? Understand the entire, from seed genetics, to soil, the harvesting, all the technology involved, the production, the distribution, where are you going to sell it? And we'll talk later about processing bottlenecks and everything in Florida and how we resolve that. But so the application permit may be fairly easy, and I think it's helpful that they've done that. But as you get into this, and I think this is helpful as part of this program, is really develop a plan for yourselves, right? So that you can utilize the research gained from these research programs, and there'll be other universities getting involved, but also from the business community who have done this in other states, and build a program that you feel has a high probability of success. And last comment, I think Ms. Bell will mention, Tennessee's got a program, Kentucky's got a program. They're kind of the southern states that, the number of people who have applied for permits but not successfully planted or cultivated is in the 60% range, right? For a variety of reasons. So what we want to make sure is in Florida when we get this program running is every one of you has the highest probability of success possible. So. And we want to thank FAMU. FAMU's been great to work with. I got to tell you, it's been super helpful, and Dr. Leong has been a great partner, and we look forward to using their faculty, internships for students, working with small and minority businesses, et cetera. So.
If I may add something here, I think I failed to mention that all our research right now are being conducted off-station or off-campus sites, actually, and like Dr. Shaki just said, we are using his site to collect data and so forth. But ultimately, I think, in fact, it is within our plan to also establish our own research facility in our station, and that will be in Quincy. And we are working on that. So, because we believe that we need to have our own research facility to be really focused on some of the more advanced research that are needed to provide the necessary information to the industry.
You know, as Dr. Frankhauser mentioned, you know, there was no money provided for in that 2017 legislation. I mean, this is a public-private partnership. And as he mentioned, private partners came and helped funded them. I mean, Sunshine Hemp is paying for the entire project, helping with faculty, internships, et cetera. So, I mean, they're taking a risk as well, but I think they believe very, 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 very confidently that this is going to be a viable and successful business in Florida.
Okay, before we get started, let me add something about Kentucky. Some of you might be asking, why is Kentucky ahead of us? And you got to understand that at the time that hemp was banned, federally banned in the 70s, early 70s, I believe, Kentucky led the country in hemp production. And so when Colorado decided to run their experiment in legalizing recreational marijuana, a lot of families in Kentucky were suddenly saying, hey, we can go back to growing hemp. It didn't work out that way. It wasn't that quick. But understand, Kentucky, when they started their program about 8 years ago, there wasn't a lot of funding, not near the funding that we're seeing here in Florida. And they spent 2 or 3 years kind of struggling, that program was. The Kentucky Department of Agriculture struggled. Now it's going strong, but they got ahead of us, but I don't think they're that far ahead of us. I think our research initiative, I'm biased in saying this, but it's ahead of the game as far as I'm concerned, comparing it to Kentucky. So before we start with the Q&A session, how many of you are interested? How many of you are growers interested in growing hemp? Can I see a show of hands? Okay, quite a few. How many of you processing? Okay, that's good to know. I felt like there were some questions asked. Again, the gentleman in the blue shirt in the last session that probably should be asked in this session, but anyway, we will open up the floor now to any questions you may have. I've got this gentleman right here.
Hey there. Just wondering what kind of research has been done for different varieties for CBD content through the research programs.
To me? Yeah, okay. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier on that currently we are looking at evaluating some of the most promising varieties of hemp for CBD extraction actually, and they are being evaluated right now. As I also mentioned earlier on that we haven't even completed the first cycle, so we know how the plants are growing, and so far we are taking observations and data from it, but we don't have the cannabinoids profile yet. In fact, we haven't evaluated the level of THC and the CBD content yet. But I think that will be done pretty soon, to my knowledge. So once we do that, right now, like I said, we mentioned we have 5 varieties. One of them is oxbow. We have citrus wine, cherry wine, we have got CBD therapy, and another unnamed selection that we are evaluating. And they were highly recommended by our partners, and by saying that these are the most promising based on our extensive experience and knowledge. So we go with that. And like I said earlier, one of the reasons why we chose these partners is because of their knowledge and experience in the hemp industry.
From the University of Florida standpoint, we are looking at CBD profiles. As many of you may have heard, there's over 113 products that have been documented in the hemp plant, and we're looking at 8 to 10 of the most common CBDG, those type of metabolites, with a focus on CBD. And Dr. Josh Freeman is looking at this over time at the North Florida location at Quincy. We got a certificate of authorization from the parent material from which these plants came from when these seeds or plant material came into the state of Florida. And the profiles that we received from the parent material range from 6 to 8% in a field setting. And the majority of our live plant material came from states like Colorado and North Carolina. In fact, I think all of it did. And so I don't have the spreadsheet in front of me. That would be something I would encourage you to visit with Dr. Freeman in the back of the room. He might be able to provide more insight on what we're seeing. We're just now getting this data, and we're moving live and desiccated plant material from our grow locations to Gainesville, to the School of Pharmacology to do these analysis. I think we'll have much more on this at our November 21st Ag Expo event at the Gulf Coast Research and Education Center. We're going to bring in our friends from the Kentucky Department of Agriculture and North Carolina Department of Agriculture. Holly Bell will be there, and we're going to hopefully at that time have more definitive information on what we're seeing with our genetics that we're looking at. We have some similar genetics, cherry wine wife, ACDC, upwards of 15 different CBD hemp varieties that we have in our trial. And you might be able to get a copy of that by going online at our pilot project website. Just search online, UF Hemp Pilot Project, and when you get to the home page, look under resources, you'll get a PowerPoint, and about slide number 8 or 10 is our list of varieties, and we're broke out of third CBD, third grain fiber, and dual purpose. So I don't have a really good answer, but it's important for us to see that creep up. And I'm going to deviate here, but we're also following THC because there's some preliminary evidence that in some conditions that THC may be creeping up, but then coming back down as long as the plants are healthy, very close to harvest. And that's one-time observation with a particular cultivar. So we really got to get a handle and do more experiments to see, is that what we're really going to see out in a field setting. Dr. Larry Smart at Cornell University has a wonderful industrial hemp pilot project up there. I was up there a week and a half ago. We were talking about THC creep and how this might impact Florida growers like yourself. He thinks that THC creep upwards towards 0.3% by dry weight of total delta-9 THC may be more genetically related than environmentally. And that's good news for us in Florida, right? So if we can understand the genetics, if we can breed our way to a low THC cultivar or a set of genetics under all conditions, that's where you really want to go for our Florida growers across the state and up in the Panhandle. So a really long answer to a simple question. So hopefully it helps.
Thank you.
Let's do this. When you ask a question, give us your name and what your interest, be it farmer, what company you represent, or what your interest may be.
Gene, can I just respond? I'm going to sound much smarter than I really am, but I was going to tell you, because this is essential to Sunshine Hemp, Mike Kelly. I'm just going to give this, the criteria they're using to select these seeds. So it's, cannabinoid production, number one, selecting high CBDA, low THC synthase, 30:1 ratios. Terpene production, long-term stabilization of desired terpenes. For those of you who know what that is, you'll know what it is. Photo period, which is different in Florida than elsewhere, obviously. Onset of flowering as early as 15 light hours with 15 to 26-day maturation for early harvesting. They're looking at auto-flowering and hybrid auto-flowering as well. Vigor and resilience, selecting for pathogen and predator resistance, important for the invasive species pieces. Biomass yield, selecting flower structure and plant morphology combinations fundamental to maximizing yield per square foot. Regional specificity, identifying variants better suited to regional ranges of photoperiod, temperature, rainfall, humidity, as well as a 92% germination rate. I think that's important as you get into this. And I think what Sunshine Hemp is, what we'd like to do at some point is not only on the seed development, but on the cultivar development, certified cultivars. So if you get that, you're sure not to get any males, right? So you get a feminized seedling. I mean, I did sound smarter than I am, but that's.
Okay, next question there.
Glenn Moon, I'm hoping to be a grower. We're interested to know more about clones and why they're not permitted, and also feminized seeds. They're not 100% where clones can be. And then will you permit farmers to clone their own plants to continue the process?
I can take a stab, and so your question speaks to probably bringing live plant material into the state, clones ready to either go into shade house or directly into the field. That's a question probably better answered by our good friends at FDAX, but there's some real reasons. You probably all have heard that we brought plant material in to try to speed up the progress of our research, and along with those plants came little pests, either in an egg form or whatnot. So there's some real challenges with bringing larger plant material into the state, and I think some of the rulemaking is geared towards ensuring the safety and security of hemp production in the state, trying to minimize the number of outbreaks. Once you have russet mites, you have russet mites. You talk to the medical marijuana growers and they're battling russet mites. And so if you can start out with clean material, you'll increase your probability of ending up with a marketable crop that's not pest damaged, not stressed. And stress will reduce levels of CBD if you're growing CBD hemp, but it also may create a situation where that THC starts to creep. So pest issues are probably one of those driving reasons for why live plant material is being restricted. I think there are some mechanisms, but again, that is a question, unless Jeff wants to take it or Dr. DeLong, I would defer to our friends at FDAX. And I will get to your pollen drift question whenever, but does anyone else want to take that?
Dr. Leong, would you like to add to that?
In fact, yeah, I can add a little bit more. In our research project, we didn't have time because of the what you call question of timeliness and how the plants are going to perform. We brought in the cuttings, actually, rooted cuttings or liners, as you may call them, actually, and we did observe initially the presence of mites and aphids there, but they are all under control. So, the chances of you bringing in or importing some of those undesirable bugs into Florida is always there. And that is why I think I failed to mention earlier on that one of our major projects that we are doing here right now is to try and identify and develop some very effective, what you call biocontrol, non-chemical strategies to control these pests here. And that's why I did mention we have 2 entomologists that are seriously looking into it, and even we are trying to put up traps and so forth to try and monitor their presence and how best we can control this problem, actually. So, and the other thing that we probably need to also understand is that, as you are maybe well aware, is that cannabis or hemp is highly photosensitive. When we first brought the plants here, actually, from Kentucky, actually, and we have to give them additional lightings just to sustain the vegetative growth, because we started to observe that they were all beginning to flower and getting into the reproductive stage. So after we gave them a couple of weeks of lightings, and they began to take on the vegetative characteristics, and then after a week or so, we put them into the field. So that's something that we need to remember and keep that in mind, actually. They're highly photosensitive.
Very good. I guess I'm also interested in understanding, are we moving towards nurseries being able to clone Florida? Once you've got your variety set up, are we going to have people in the business to sell clones? I just say clones mostly because we're not dealing with any fertilization, and that's obviously when you're growing the oil, that's the goal. So feminized seeds do not work as well as clones.
One of the understandings that we have with our industry partners, like Dr. Shaki here, is that other than their proprietary rights and so forth, that any research information that we acquire or that we collect from the research projects is in the public domain, that the professors or the faculty involved in the research projects will be able to make use of those data for their research presentations and share that with the general public, actually. And it will be in publications like referee journals or whatever media that we think may be suitable or appropriate for public use.
Another question?
My name is Lee Markman from Pura Vita Farms. In regards to where you're growing these plants in real-world locations and testing, is there going to be available on a website or something, a map showing these real-world testing locations? And is there going to be a brief synopsis of each growing cycle showing what your results were?
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, we do have a map here. When I gave my presentation to the Senate Agriculture Committee, we have a map showing where the sites are, the location of the research projects going on. Unfortunately, right now, we don't have a site on family website where we are able to show or put all this information. Maybe sometime in the near future, we will try to work something out and have it available.
Well, since the weather's different from all parts of the state and the soil and everything else like that, how many actually real-world testing sites are you planning on using?
We have 7 approved licenses right now, licenses that we plan to have research going on. And maybe, again, I guess, sometime in the 2020, we may increase that to 10. One of the major limiting factors is the, what they call, our limited resources that FAMU has. We, unfortunately, do not receive any kind of state funding for our research. The state only provides the university funds for our teaching programs, and all our research has to come, the funding will have to come from other sources, from external sources. And
Okay,
so we
one
have to
last
budget
question.
sorry?
One last question. If a farmer wanted to present a plot of land to you to use as a research project at no cost per se for your research, would we be able to do that?
Right now, I can't answer in the affirmative, but that's something that we can think about or talk it through, because the final decision will have to come through my university leadership team. In this particular case that we are having right now, our industrial hemp project, we have a contractual arrangement with 3 of our partners. So there are many other farmers that have come forward and wanting to grow hemp with us and so forth. So unfortunately, we are not able to go along with that, because the decision to participate with these 3 partners was made by our board of trustees. So it was made at a very high level to get involved in the hemp project.
Thank you.
I'd like to take a stab at the University of Florida perspective. You can go online and see where our grow sites are. All of our sites are University of Florida managed properties. The state of Florida actually owns all university properties. And that can be found easily on our pilot project website. The reason we're only doing pilot project work on University of Florida properties on this initial phase, this 2-year pilot project, was by the time we presented our information to the Board of Trustees and we showed them a DEA permit that says we're working with a controlled substance. This was prior to President Trump signing the 2018 Farm Bill, and we showed them our bonding license, and everyone in the room gets nervous, right? And so it was thought that the best course of action moving into this new potential crop was to keep control of it, and so it is at our research and education centers up and down the state. Real world conditions. We're on that rocky soil down at Homestead. We're up on this heavier sand up here just 30 minutes west of this room where we're at today at Quincy at our North Florida Research and Education Center. Dr. Glenn Akins, the center director, not only for that site, but Suwannee Valley and Mariana. And then at J, which is that heavier soil getting farther out in that panhandle. And not only do we have those locations, but we intentionally work to get seed from China overseas at about a latitude of adaptability to the panhandle. That took 7 months and a lot of discussions with U.S. Customs and Border, but we got that seed in. And that's to give us a good representation of how industrial hemp on the grain and fiber side might perform in the panhandle, and we're seeing some positive results. All the weather information, grow information will be online, will be presented not only at workshops over the course of the next year or 2, but also at that November 21st Florida Ag Expo. And the second question, refresh me on what that second, can you get involved? The question was, can you growers get involved in pilot projects? Obviously in phase 1, this 2-year pilot project, our authority does not allow us to engage on private grow efforts, but once these cultivation permits are issued from FDACs, our scientists, if the funds are there, are actively looking and will be looking for partnerships to get on farm so we can get a more representative sample on how industrial hemp does everywhere from J, Pensacola on down to Homestead. Because small scale studies are just that. They're going to provide some good specific information, enhance what we know about industrial hemp, but we got to get a broad look at this, and we got to troubleshoot and work together. And we're going to do in-service training with our extension staff and IFAS here in early December and equip our extension field agents with the tools to help you all as growers as part of our land grant mission as these cultivation permits, I guess 3,000 of them at least, go out the door. So we're ramping up, but at this time we cannot get on grower fields with our initial pilot project effort.
Okay, next
Phil
question.
Calandra, I'm looking for production information. We've pretty much had a drought for the last 3 months, and I wonder if you could talk to irrigation, water consumption, and planting density.
I'll take a quick stab at it. I just don't want to go on and on. Irrigation, we think, is going to be needed, especially on the CBD hemp side, on the vast majority of any outdoor type grow. And an indoor, you're obviously going to be in irrigation. We're currently, for the most part, on outdoor in a raised bed drip system. Here in Florida, when you're 3 days away from a drought, you're going to need to prepare for that and keep these plants in a healthy state and make sure you have the horsepower there, either on the nutrition and or on the water state of that plant for optimum growth. And so you talk about the stress of the lack of water. That is real. That is a threat. So if you're growing large scale, either a large traveling gun, center pivot, linear system, or if you have the infrastructure going raised beds, we're doing that at Quincy on plastic for weed control and moisture conservation. We're also going to be engaging in the use of all crop label fumigants for that under plastic, and that'll be done hopefully early spring next year to try to get a handle on enhancing that weed control in addition to providing that irrigation fed through drip line.
If I may add to that, I guess, I think we haven't done this research yet. Based on our literature review, soil moisture and soil temperature they are very critical in terms of hemp cultivation, because without that you will have a hard time in germinating your seeds in the field, and at the same time weed control will be a major problem once as you always know that the weeds will always outgrow your crop if you give them a chance, actually. So you have to take that into consideration. In our research projects right now, all the fields are being irrigated because they are looking at the CBD aspect of it. So I think if they are going into fiber production, I think that may be something different. But because of the high value of CBD, I think it is worth their while to make sure that the fields are well irrigated and taken care of.
Good. No, we have time for a couple more questions.
Yes, my name's Josephine Crail. In the FDAC's proposed rules, it states that the THCA levels will need to be calculated into the total THC content for hemp. And I'm wondering if the research projects are tracking THCA levels in the varietals that you all are growing to ensure that 0.3% is kind of stayed at.
That's a great question, and even a better question for Erin Berthold, which is she is a postdoc in our School of Pharmacology. We're looking at total delta-9 THC, and at this point I'd like to defer to Dr. Josh Freeman in the back of the room. Maybe he can Yeah, so what Dr. Freeman's saying is we're looking at that major profile. We're looking at the acidic part. There is a calculation of the delta-9, and then times that 0.877, I believe, times the carboxyl component. And so that gives you your total delta-9 THC. But I'm an administrator, which is much worse than a biochemist. So.
Next question. Go ahead.
My question is, after the destruction of Hurricane Michael and seeing the devastation and the impact that it left on the actual buildings and homes, is hempcrete in the near future of being able to be used to build infrastructures of homes and commercial dwellings and buildings?
again, I'm not an expert, but I've spent a lot of time looking at the various, product options and talking to folks who are, or are in this business, in the space, obviously heavy into the CBDs, and that whole range of cannabinoids. Fiber, we've had a lot of conversations about fiber for textiles. There's some folks here in the room. We're going to talk about that a little later. We're working on that. We've had, there's a couple of folks in Florida that are very focused on hempcrete. Part of it is the process. Once you grow it and decorticate it and process, get the fiber and mixture ready to go. Most of the extraction technologies out there and processing technologies are really focused on oil production. We're working hard on looking at attracting fiber production and facilities that would create enough of that fiber for hempcrete. There's a lot of interest. I mean, it's there. So if you want to take the lead on this, that'd be great.
We currently use EF block. We've built a model home on Tuskegee University. And so we started doing the comparison of the EF block, the earth-friendly block, and the hempcrete. And they're pretty much the same. But since we're going into the hemp industry,
correct.
I was just wondering, because it's it withstands the hurricane winds, the mold retardant, as well as fire resistant. So I was just wondering if that was something that was being
There's a gentleman by the name of
looked at.
Bob Clayton who's, he's evangelical about this, and he may be here today, but Bob has been, a voice in the wilderness for years on hempcrete, and he's got a hempcrete house he's built. So I would be happy to connect you. And then I know the Department of Ag and Holly are looking at a lot of these different options. Because people at the end of the day, this CBD market, is exploding. We get benchmark spot pricing reports every month on nationally what it looks like. The pricing for a kilo of CBD oil has dropped, by a quarter over the last 4 months. It's all kind of expectations. But the folks in the business, see fiber and these other product lines as really, long-term sustainability. So everybody keep their eyes open, and we're all trying to, provide these, success options.
If I may add,
Yeah, go ahead.
I think if you look up in the internet, people have been telling me, there are 25,000 uses for hemp. The internet says there are 50,000 uses for hemp. So I don't know. So it looks like there's a lot of almost unlimited applications for hemp. But I don't want to spread rumors, but rumor has said that somebody is looking into establishing a hemp textile industry in the Jacksonville area. So I may be wrong in this. And also that somebody in Florida is looking into establishing a factory for conversion of hemp into plastic. So, these are rumors that I hear. So I may be wrong, but hopefully they are true, and so that will expand the market demand and the industry base.
So if there's anybody out there with the money, we got the projects for you. Right?
I do know some research done in Kentucky has shown that hemp makes a very, very strong fabric, very strong. So it's canvas-like, maybe even stronger than canvas. So we've got still a few minutes. I would like to ask Jerry Fankhauser to talk about pollen drift.
We got one more question. This woman's been waiting.
Well, okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
My name's Bobby Golden. I have a farm just 35 miles east of here. My interest in hemp is for fiber, and I'd like to know if there is just a season or if we in Florida can raise hemp year-round, or if there's any research being done on that.
Okay, so from the IFAS pilot project standpoint, we're looking at all three types of hemp up and down the state. Certainly when you look at the CBD outdoor and the grain and fiber side in South Florida, if you have adaptable cultivars, they're looking at possibly 2 grows a year, a fall and then kind of a spring. In an outdoor setting, maybe even 3. That's all going to depend on refining the system and having adapted varieties. Up here in the Panhandle, hemp is an annual crop. It is cold sensitive, which is a competitive advantage for us in Florida because my family farms in northern Indiana. Most of the equipment goes in the shed at the end of October. Doesn't come back out till May. We planted in snow flurries up there in May. We have a competitive advantage. If we can find the adapted cultivars, maybe we can get 1.5 grows or at least a solid 1 grow up in the panhandle. On the CBD side, maybe with auto flowering or day neutral, where you're not dependent on that length of darkness for the growth, maybe there is that possibility up in this part of the world, 850, right? 850, to get that kind of growth. But that's why that work we're doing at Quincy under the leadership of Dr. Josh Freeman is important. And if you all are going to be doing work up here, I don't know if you want to comment what that potential is.
Well, I guess there's always great potential in hemp, and that's one of the reasons why the university decides to join in and make a contribution to the growth of a sustainable industry. Again, we don't have direct research data to be able to make any strong recommendation or assertion, but I base my information on the literature search that I look at, and if you talk about fiber production from hemp, usually they report that a farmer will get approximately about $480 to $500 per acre or so. And if you check it again and see how much income or profit you're going to make from CBD production, and the range is immense, it's almost unbelievable. They will say that a farmer can get about $2,000 per acre to $75,000 per acre. I don't know how true it is, but it gives you an idea about the variability, and you never can tell for sure, what is the truth and what is fiction. So just to give you some idea why people are all lining up to try and grow hemp for CBD.
I think what's positive and what could happen, and it goes back to what Mr. Sharkey said, if we can get a fiber industry to develop a processing plant in this part of the world, there will be a great opportunity. Because I view this whole fiber side kind of like ethanol production in the upper Midwest. You look at ethanol production, and the majority, 80% of that field corn production in a 20 to 30 mile radius around that ethanol plant ends up coming to that ethanol plant. And so if the industry locates here in Florida, we've got the expertise. You all, if you have the adapted cultivars on the fiber side, it can grow in this part of the world. There's no doubt, and we'll make every best effort to get that science out there and to support that growth. But certainly getting someone to invest and siting a plant here, because it's very costly to move fiber, move that bulk material very far, just like for ethanol production. And so that's how I kind of see that playing out.
I think, to my knowledge, there's only one certified hemp variety for fiber, actually, and that is a variety called Elite that was developed in Colorado.
Let's have one last question right there. I know you've been waiting for a long time.
My name is Michael Brown. I live right down the road here, Gaston County, Quincy. I'm a real live farmer. My question is, I'm saying I want to grow hemp. Now, I'm looking at that picture up there, looking at that machine right there. That machine, I know what a combine costs. So I'll be a startup person. My family always grew tobacco. So I know what it takes to grow tobacco. Even right now, I grew the last crop of tobacco in Gaston County in 2006. So it's kind of like when somebody says they want a farm, they think they want a farm because if you're not born into it, you got to go buy a tractor that costs $60,000. You got to get you some land. You got to lease. I'm saying real life situations like a person like me. So for me, I'm saying I've been to meetings about right in Gaston County. You probably got the biggest marijuana rap next door to me. I pass it every day, and they study building. I'm like, my goodness, I missed that. Couldn't get in on that. I wasn't big enough. So I was just trying to come here today. That's why I took time out. I need to be on my tractor right now. But I took time out to come here today. So I'm saying real life situation. Now, I'm looking at this picture right here. That piece of equipment about $300,000. So I'm saying I want to grow hemp. Maybe I might not. So I'm wondering, is it going to be something like somebody like me? Startup. Now, I got tractors, a couple of 100 acres of land. Like I said, we grew tobacco. Right now, I still got bonds on my farm. Tobacco is gone. I mean, it's gone. But we were very successful in growing it. So for me, this would be a good avenue for me. But I'm wondering, okay, I'm saying I'm going to grow hemp. This is a real life situation. I'm listening at y'all telling me about the seeds, how we get this stuff. So I'm saying, now, I'm going to grow hemp. How I'm going to pick this stuff? Do I need irrigation? That piece of equipment, do I harvest it by hand? Do I grow it like you grow oats? Do you grow it like, I know about growing tobacco. Do I plant it 24 inches apart, 12 inches apart? I know to a dime how much it takes to grow tobacco. And nobody has said, what did this stuff bring a pound? I mean, is it $7 a pound, $2 a pound? I don't even know. So I'm just saying I want to grow hemp, maybe I don't. So thank you, that's my question.
Jerry, would you like that one?
Yeah. Let me just, Jerry, let me
go ahead.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but very legitimate, very business question, obviously, on this. And so if you look at how other states have approached this, because we're starting on this, very good question. How do small farmers, really get into this business? How do they afford this equipment? How do they process? I mean, what's this whole plan? And what you'll find in Kentucky, Tennessee, and Colorado, so much, Oregon, but Kentucky, Tennessee are pretty good models. And I know that Ms. Bell was going to talk about providing, kind of education, tutorials, information to farmers like you. Like, what are the basics here? What do I really need to know about? Where do I get resources to help me understand how far apart these plants have got to be planted? What's the irrigation process? But the business model that I've seen in Kentucky is there are a lot of small farmers, and they plant it and harvest it by hand. I mean, 5 acres, 10 acres. I mean, it's seasonal, obviously, and then somebody will come in with just like and with a harvester, an expensive harvester. You pay X, they'll take it Y, they'll take it to you take it to a processing plant, and they'll give you X for what you got. Right? That industry isn't here in Florida yet, but enterprising people will figure out how to get set up pieces of this. I think the first thing is, how do you grow it? What's the business model? If I grow 5 acres, what's the yield? Is it a yield in fiber? Is it a yield in CBD raw oil? Is it a yield in? I mean, that information is out there. I mean, it's growing, and we make that available to you. We got our Hemp Association, and there are others that can help you provide that information. Now, we're not growers, but people who are. There's probably people sitting around you at the table here who can help you with that. But very legit. Yeah, right there. So scale. Some people think, are probably correct, like corn. This industry, this hemp industry, is going to be industrial scale. Within 2 or 3 years. I mean, it's going to be big. It's already big out west, in the Midwest, and people are growing thousands of acres. So, I mean, but can a small business person, a boutique person who wants to grow 30 acres, 20 acres, make a business out of it, right? Well, there's a lot of questions you have to answer to get there, but growing it, drying it, processing it, where do I sell it? I mean, what products do I want to develop? I mean, all those things. That's why we talked earlier. You got to have a little bit of a plan, and I think the department and other resources, as we start this business, can be helpful to you and others. That's kind of what this conference is all about. Good questions, and Jerry,
I think both pilot projects, by mandate from state statute, are supposed to have a component of our report to the governor of the state of Florida and state legislators of an economic analysis. And although we can't scale that up very well to what it looks like for you in the field, we at least need to take a look at what people are seeing in other states on production costs, and the economics are changing daily, right, Jeff? And when you look at a combine like that, you don't see the front end of the combine, so I can't even discuss what the heads look like. But the important thing is, in IFAS, we have ag engineers that are now starting to talk to our research team, and we're going to begin to take a look at mechanization, because mechanization may allow even mid-sized farmers, if they can modify their existing combine to harvest grain industrial hemp. And then we're a big beef cattle state, right? And there may be situations where we can harvest grain and run cattle through the field once FDA and USDA approves that type of use of the hemp leaf material.
Okay, we need to move on.
Yeah,
now.
I'm sorry.
Hey, let's have a round of applause for our panelists.
And I would be doing a disservice if I didn't mention pollen drift. There was that question. I will say, in this state of Florida, we need a culture of communication. Some limited data shows anywhere from 0 to 3 miles for pollen drift. Now, you tell me what that distance is. We don't know. And so you have a neighbor that's raising CBD hemp, or you have a medical marijuana permitted by Department of Health, then you got FDACS permitting you all as growers, 2 different state agencies. You're going to need to work together, whether that's at your local Farm Bureau meeting or the coffee shop. It's successfully done in Illinois and Ohio and Indiana with field corn production, although we only deal with the 600-foot setback for seed corn production in the state of Indiana. But if nothing else, if you remember nothing else from my message today, hemp production in the state of Florida is going to require a culture of communication to protect yourself, limit access to lawyers, because if you don't have a culture of communication, you're going to find yourself possibly involved in some litigation. It's happening out west. Jeff, no doubt, has heard of these horror stories out west. The pollen can move into a medical marijuana grow operation or a CBD production field and drop that THC level drastically very quickly, or CBD in the case of the permitted grower. And so we got to talk to each other, you all as growers. That 3 miles looks like that's where people are landing, but like FDAX noted earlier, there's no hard science, especially in the state of Florida, to really put that into rulemaking at present. So I wanted to answer that question for the gentleman in the back of the room. Thank you all.
Thank you all. I appreciate the great questions. Appreciate the panel.
All right, everybody, just a couple of quick housekeeping things before I let you all get to lunch. I know some of you have definitely